the dust-colored town of Whiskey Bend baked beneath the afternoon sun. Its crooked wooden buildings casting long shadows over a main street that had seen too many sins and too few apologies. And as the creaking sign of the auction house swayed in the desert wind, a crowd gathered to watch a shameful spectacle. A woman with kind eyes, strong shoulders, and a trembling breath stood on a platform like she was an object, not a person, forced to keep her chin high while the men who surrounded her whispered cruel jokes about her size, laughing like wolves, but she didn't cry. She swallowed every insult like a stone in her chest. Remembering the days when her father used to tell her she was stronger than storms, she had been brought here by greedy relatives who had lost their land in gambling fights and sold her contract to pay their debts, claiming she was too inconvenient to keep. But as the auctioneer's hammer pounded against the block, a tall cowboy in a weather-worn duster coat stepped forward, his silhouette sharp as a blade against the fading light. His name was Colton Hayes, a man known more for silence than for speech, a wandering rancher with a reputation of doing the right thing even when the right thing cost everything. And when he looked at the woman, whose name was Mercy, he saw not the shape of her body but the exhaustion in her soul, the pain hidden behind her quiet pride, and something inside him refused to look away. The bidding started low, but the laughter was loud. Men raising their prices just to mock her, treating her like entertainment instead of a human being. But when the final bid was called, Colton raised his hat and offered a sum so high the laughter stopped cold. The hammer fell and silence swallowed the street, because no one understood why a cowboy would spend so much on someone the town had chosen to belittle. The moment Mercy was released, she backed away, afraid he would demand obedience like the papers allowed. But instead Colton took those papers, tore them clean in half and tossed them into the wind, telling her softly that he didn't buy her, he saved her, because no one deserved chains, not the metal kind, not the invisible ones people wrapped around hearts. Confused, Mercy asked why, and he simply said, "Because I saw your worth before they ever saw your shape." And with nowhere to go, she followed him to his ranch near the foothills, where the fences stretched wide and the grass danced like green flames under the sky. The ranch was quiet, not empty but restful, and Colton introduced her to his horse Jasper, to the chickens that strutted like kings, and to the open sky that never judged. The days passed slowly and Mercy helped with chores, discovering that her strength was no burden. It was a blessing. She lifted hay bales heavier than most men, cooked meals that warmed the heart, and stitched leather with hands steady as sunrise. And as the ranch began to breathe with new life, Colton watched her reclaim pieces of herself bit by bit. One evening, under a moon like a silver coin in the dark, Mercy confessed that she'd always been told her weight made her unlovable, that her family treated her kindness as weakness, that every room she walked into shrank like she didn't belong. But Colton shook his head and told her the truth. People fear what they cannot break, and she was unbreakable. Their quiet nights by the fire grew into soft laughter, gentle trust and unspoken promises. But trouble has a way of following the weak hearts of cruel men. And one morning the same relatives who sold her arrived with a gang, furious that the ranch had prospered under Mercy's hard-working hands, demanding she return so they could sell her again. Mercy froze, old trauma squeezing her lungs, but Colton stepped in front of her like a shield forged of thunder, and said she left with dignity and she'd never go back without it. The gang drew their guns, hungry for intimidation, but Mercy stepped forward, eyes blazing with all the pain she had endured, and declared that she was done being sold, done being belittled, done being quiet for the comfort of others. Her voice cracked but did not break, and the men, shocked by the power of her conviction, hesitated long enough for the sheriff and townsfolk, who had quietly followed, to witness her courage, to take control. The relatives were arrested for trafficking and fraud, their cruelty dragged into the light at last. News spread across Whiskey Bend about the woman who stood her ground with nothing but honesty. And slowly people stopped laughing and started respecting, because nothing changes a town faster than a mirror held up to its shame. Weeks later, as Mercy tended the ranch, she realized she no longer flinched at her reflection in window glass. And Colton noticed the way she smiled now, with her whole face, not just her lips. One sunset, with the sky bleeding orange and gold across the fields, he asked if she would stay by his side, not because he needed help, but because the ranch felt more alive when she was in it, because her kindness was the kind of strength the world needed more of. Mercy, tears sliding like diamonds down her cheeks, whispered yes, not because he rescued her, but because he taught her to rescue herself. Their story became a quiet legend whispered in saloons. The cowboy who saw worth where others saw weight. The woman who bloomed when the world expected her to wilt. A reminder that love is not found by measuring bodies but by understanding souls. And as the seasons changed and the ranch flourished, Mercy often sat on the porch with Colton's arm around her shoulders, the two of them watching the stars, grateful for the moment a cruel world tried to break her, and instead built the foundation of her freedom. Weeks passed on the ranch like pages turning in a slow novel, and Mercy found herself waking up before dawn, not out of fear anymore but excitement, because every morning carried a new promise instead of punishment. She fed the horses with gentle hands, swept the barn, stitched broken saddles, and with each useful task, her confidence returned like a heartbeat that had gone quiet for too long. But outside the ranch, the world hadn't forgotten, and rumors churned through Whiskey Bend like wildfire. Some whispered that Mercy was bewitched to control the cowboy. Others swore she'd use him and leave. But when townsfolk visited the ranch one by one for help fixing boots or clothing, Mercy treated them with respect they didn't deserve, and slowly their shame turned into admiration. One afternoon, a young girl named Hazel came shyly to the ranch, bullied by other children for being different, and Mercy knelt before her, looked into her teary eyes, and said the words she wished someone had told her years ago. "You are not here to fit them, you are here to grow you." And Hazel hugged her tight, planting a seed of kindness that shook the mean-hearted in town. Meanwhile, Colton noticed Mercy smiling more, humming while she worked, the heaviness lifting from her shoulders. And he hoped quietly she would stay forever, though he didn't dare speak it. Then came trouble like a storm rolling over quiet plains. The ranch taxes were raised unfairly by a corrupt deputy who never forgave Mercy for turning the town against cruelty, and he arrived with threats claiming she owed him for daring to rise above her place. But Colton stepped forward, jaw clenched, declaring he would ride to the capital and fight the injustice legally. Mercy, afraid of losing him, begged him not to go alone, but he kissed her knuckles softly and whispered, "I'll return, because you're waiting." And with that promise, rode off into the horizon. During his absence, the deputy returned with thugs, tearing at fences and frightening livestock to break her spirit. But Mercy stood firm, rallying neighboring ranchers who once mocked her, teaching them how to fix fences faster than they could be destroyed. And the ranch survived because she refused to break. Nights grew long and Mercy sat on the porch, staring at the stars, wondering if she was strong enough without Colton. And when doubt crept in, she whispered to the wind, "I am not who I was," reminding herself that she had learned to fight with dignity, not fists. Then one dusk, hooves thundered across the dirt road, and Colton returned, filthy, bruised, but victorious, with a signed ruling that removed the deputy from power. And the town gathered to celebrate, cheering Mercy more loudly than the cowboy. In the golden wash of lantern light, Colton took her trembling hands and told her he rode not for the ranch, but for her right to breathe free. And Mercy, finally believing she deserved such loyalty, leaned into him as the crowd applauded. That night, standing beneath a sky painted with stars and new beginnings, Mercy realized she was no longer defined by weight, grief, or shame. The ranch had become her backbone, the town her witness, and the cowboy her compass, guiding her toward a life she never knew she was allowed to want.